over the next year, unfortunately, there's not much hope left that you can, not much tangible hope left. There are groups that are fighting who give you some small part of hope, but unfortunately, with no outside support, the situation is not going to be much better anytime soon. Uh, but I've always said that this, and I'll say this again, I do believe in this new generation of Afghans, the generation that had that 20 years to educate themselves. I do believe in them. I know that this generation with don't have any ethnical fights between them, don't have any uh, they don't have corruption is basically what I want to say, I guess. And that the only thing that they will be fighting for is a bright future for Afghanistan. So I am looking forward to seeing them being more active. Hopefully, I will be a part of this activity and we'll take our country, not anytime soon, maybe, but eventually take it to a better future.
We're again facing another famine, but this time it's more worrying. There's been a dramatic reduction in aid happening over time. The UN has only 9% of its budget for Afghanistan moving forward funded. And the further we get out from the end of the war, the less interest there is from donors to continue to give. With a crippled economy, the other question is what happens to the Afghan fund, which now holds the Afghan central bank reserves, and how does that play out? Does any of that money start to flow to be used for the Afghan economy?
In a more pragmatic way, where I won't be hopelessly optimistic when it comes to Afghanistan within the next year, I'm seeing a lot of clashes between the Taliban from Kandahar and the Taliban in Kabul. Of course, Mullah Yaqub and brother has already pledged their support to the Haqqanis, and they're moving more towards them. That sort of leaves a huge vacuum within Kandahar, where the whole power is being consolidated and concentrated right now. And what I see is more and more bans that are not even nobody even thinks about it, or not even fully practiced, will be happening, but those will all focus on women and girls. I do see a decline in fundraising when it comes to the UN and their efforts to get more funds into Afghanistan, because nobody wants to engage with a party that is not standing up for what they said when they were in negotiations. And last but not the least, I think people are done with Afghanistan. The West is done with Afghanistan. They have found another project, a new project, and for them, they just don't want to invest more time in focusing on human rights in Afghanistan, B, even caring about Afghanistan. So I do see more human rights abuses happening, and I do see nobody taking the notice of it. And the most important thing is there is a huge power vacuum that is being created right now, and nobody's taking notice of it. And that is going to affect the normal population of Afghanistan, who is dying out of poverty and natural disasters and climate change, actually. So, yeah.
I'll be watching how a change in discourse underlying international engagement in Afghanistan moves from a focus on the Taliban to a focus on the Afghans and Afghan engagement and Afghan survivability, which doesn't require recognition of the Taliban, but it'll put Afghan survival rights at the center of international engagements in Afghanistan, and watch how that can impact the way the Taliban determine to interact with the international community on so many of these issues. So how can that be done? These measures could involve providing limited targeted assistance to local stakeholders while opening the way for reviving the economy from what it is now, by some restoration of the Afghanistan Bank under very strict international oversight. This can help create more sustainable humanitarian aid, impact the economy, and maybe encourage the Taliban to behave differently if the international community is working with Afghans and not with them to make an impact. This limited kind of target assistance could be offered in advance for letting women work more in health or education sectors, along with careful monitoring of Taliban compliance before taking any further steps?
Well, I'll be watching first their treatment of women and girls, to be honest. For me, as a woman and as a educated woman, I would like to see girls and women back to work and the education institutions. So that's an important development if that happens. And my particular interest is to watch which direction Taliban's policies, laws, regulations, behavior will go in bringing women back to education and work. That's one area that I'll be looking closely. The other area is their relationship, Taliban's relationship with the neighboring states in terms of how they manage the borders, how they manage emergence of this new transnational terror groups that are in the region, and how they interact and with them going forward. What will be the linkages between the Taliban and those groups and those small or big transnational terrorist groups in the region? I'll be looking at that aspect as well. How that relationship will that relationship evolve? It will be strengthening in the coming future, or there will be Taliban will cut ties with them. I am not sure which direction will go, but I'll be looking at that aspect as well, because it will determine Taliban's nature of governance. It will determine who the Taliban will be, the nature of Taliban will be, and it will determine their financial sources as well. So that will be the second area that I'll be looking at. And of course, the third area, another important area, is that how they govern in terms of resources, distribution of resources, because we have been hearing a lot about the lack of equal distribution of resources, even if the funding or the resources or money or packages, humanitarian packages, are coming from outside, mostly facilitated by the UN. But there are many reports that indicates that, well, there are discrepancies and distribution of those resources. Particularly, some of the Taliban members are creating impediments to the distribution of those resources. So I'll be looking both at how Taliban will have hands and distribution of those resources, the de facto authorities, and on the other hand, how they manage the distribution of resources to the remote areas and particularly the deprived population. So there will be three areas that at least that I think I would be much interested to follow that.